to the fourth in my series of 6 videos on why projects fail. I identified behaviors, but they're not the be-all to end-all on why certain projects do fail. There's lots of twists and turns and reasons and behaviors as to why outcomes can sometimes be less than favorable. However, these videos do provide food for thought. I'm Elizabeth Berman at Polestar Energy Consultants, and the topic for today is trust. Oftentimes, people think about trust in the context of personal relationships. But trust is fundamental to our everyday lives. Really fundamental. Just think about it. Whether you're aware of it or not, it permeates every aspect of our daily lives. First of all, what is trust? Well, trust implies a depth and assurance of feeling that's often based on inconclusive evidence. It's based in a firm belief of integrity, ability, and character of a person or thing, and the condition of placing trust in someone or something has resulting obligations. Anything that involves or is made up of people, like entire countries, corporations, organizations, project teams, or even smaller units like a family, a couple, or just you. Anything that involves people is affected by trust. It isn't something that we're born with. Trust has to be nurtured, taught, developed, and earned over a period of time. It has to be built. And if it's ever broken, it's very difficult to restore. So now, how about those steps or fundamentals to building trust? Why don't we think back to when we were young? Because then and now, the building blocks are the same. When we were young and trying to make a new friend or build a relationship with a sister or a brother, we started out by talking. We would have simple conversations about the things that mattered to us. We'd share our ideas, likes, dislikes, or wants. And if the person you were talking to heard you out, agreed, or even disagreed, but in a nice way, and if that person felt that they were receiving the same from you in return, a mutual sense of respect started to develop. As long as neither one of you hid any ulterior motives, there was also a sense of transparency that would develop. And if this approach was utilized consistently, trust grew. Similar key characteristics apply to business development. Let me give you an example. Let's say that a project team calls a town hall meeting with the intent of introducing the idea of building a new power plant. The mistrust and suspicion typically met with at the start of an evening like that can be slowly and methodically changed and altered, hopefully in a way that is meaningful and useful to both sides of the debate. The party that is unknown and probably out of favor, but there to promote the new idea, has to, absolutely must engage in effective communication. And that means that they speak clearly, without manipulation, so that the audience, general public, and all stakeholders can understand their process, goals, and intended outcomes. The people need to feel that they understand the presentations so that they can go away and make informed decisions or vote appropriately. They need to understand perspectives so that they know what their role and stake in the process will be. So effective communication is the first step, but it's an important one because it fosters respect. Respect can be conveyed in tone and content as long as it's not condescending. Respect can be demonstrated by showing care and concern, or by a show of understanding of cultural differences. You know, little things go a long way, simple things like saying please and thank you, or listening to someone that's speaking to you with genuine interest. So, if effective communication and respect are performed successfully, a certain transparency starts to develop. And that means no hidden agendas, no ulterior motives. A good example of transparency would be, let's go back to the town hall meeting. A presenter makes a presentation to the audience, talks about the project, presents some facts, and someone in the audience goes out to verify this and then is able to come back and say, you know what? That person was honest and upfront. The information he's presented us is actually fair and correct. So these three fundamental steps, effective communication, respect, and transparency, came to me out of my personal experience and also due to the analysis of certain situations. But you can read about it in literature that talks about the subject of trust. In particular, I applaud the way Stephen Covey covers the subject in his New York Times bestseller called The Speed of Trust. In it, he says, trust is the one thing that changes everything. I really haven't come across anyone who's done a better job of presenting the subject of trust, and I highly recommend reading the book and practicing its principles, which goes into even further detail on other methods that can be used to build trust, such as righting wrongs, showing loyalty, and so forth. You know, when you're building trust, it's important that the information be shared widely so that everyone that's involved has a common understanding. Because just one individual or a small subset of a larger group can wreck the entire process if they feel that their perspectives are being ignored. And developments are certainly more apt to fail due to those types of circumstances. One other approach to building trust especially when the debate is a difficult one, can be to build it on low-risk issues first. If, over the period of time, things work out well, tougher issues can be tackled. Now, why does this work? It works because one party is allowed to test the intentions of another party over time, and it takes time to build trust. Now that I've talked a little bit about steps to building trust, let me talk about a few ways. Let me circle back actually and explain why some of the things that happen in the absence of trust. For example, in the workplace, in the absence of trust, fear, backstabbing, and paranoia step in to fill the void. Do you know what happens when people who work together don't trust one another? They spend an awful lot of time watching their back, looking over their shoulder, checking out to see what their rivals or other departments are doing to make sure that their position isn't being undermined. They spend a lot of time conniving and protecting their turf instead of spending the time to do the work that they should be doing. At the organizational level, there's also situations of mistrust, and massive amounts of records are kept because the organization doesn't trust its suppliers, its customers, its clients, or even its employees. Now granted, a certain amount of record keeping is necessary and it's even advisable. But there's massive amounts of administrative work that's done really just to mitigate these feelings of mistrust. And that translates into cost and operative expense. Let me give you another example, going back to the town hall meeting. In that example, where the project team wants to introduce the idea of a new power plant, they'll run into problems too. Even if it's a low carbon emission, renewable energy type project like wind, solar, or geothermal. You go in with the intent of engaging the community in a meaningful and effective discussion, and you want to educate both parties, them and yourself. Maybe you're presenting the science. Maybe they're presenting their concerns. But the point is that you want all of the stakeholders to have some degree of presence and participation in the decision-making process, and yet, here's what you run into. First off, the audience has perceptions of bias on the part of the presenter, and sometimes even on the folks that are merely facilitating the evening. They don't trust the information that's being presented, and they certainly don't trust the people that are presenting it. Furthermore, they may have a limited ability to understand the process. There may be preconceived perceptions to overcome. There may be hidden politics at play, and so forth. My point is that the absence of trust undermines everything. It affects our quality of life, and it affects results. So in conclusion, don't be sloppy about your application of trust. And don't become complacent just because mistrust and the absence of trust has become so commonplace worldwide, across all ages, races, and genders. Remember, with trust comes synergism. And that means that the interaction produces a combined effect that is greater than the sum of two separate effects. The benefits are exponential. So, with trust comes synergism. Without trust comes destruction. An absence of trust can bring down the strongest nation, the most successful company, the deepest friendship. Now tell me, which do you choose? Well, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed listening. Next time when we meet, I'll be talking about dealing with conflict. And in the meantime, if you'd like to comment or reach out to me, feel free to email or call. My contact details are on the website, polestarenergyconsultants.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.